Series of messages I've been working on through the summer, and we will wrap up next week, is what I'm calling Stone Tablets in a Wireless World. We're asking ourselves the question, are these commandments that God gave to Moses relevant for us today? Hopefully we've been discovering that most certainly they are. You know, this week I was thinking about some of the things going forth in this message, and you know, I thought I was doing okay. Really, I did. I thought life was pretty good. But then I heard that if I want to feel right or look right, I need to get a Bowflex. I don't have a Bowflex, so I suddenly realized maybe I'm not as healthy as I should be. I can't be. That guy in the ad, he had better abs than I do. Well, better abs than I used to have. Well, what am I saying? I never had abs. And then I saw an ad about what I needed to do to be stylish. I needed to drive a Mercedes convertible. I still own a 17-year-old truck with 290,000 miles on it. Real men drive two-seater convertibles. But now I've learned that I can't be stylish with the truck I have, no matter how nice my truck is or isn't, or how well it runs or doesn't run. There's no way it's as nice as a Mercedes. And then this ad came in the mail. Kohl's is having a sale. I got one of those Kohl's discount coupons, a sale for fall. Because fall is coming, and you need to dress for the fall season if you're going to be fashionable. Last year's fall fashions are, well, they're just so last year. I didn't have time to go to shop at Kohl's this week, and even though the weather had turned warm towards the end of the week, I just wasn't dressed correctly for it. And fall isn't as fall, if you will. Then I got a phone call. I'm not sure how they got my number or how I entered the contest, but I won. I was selected. Denise and I are going on a 7-day vacation at a resort in the Dominican Republic, and it's free. All I have to do is respond, give them my credit card information, then find out how much it will really cost me to go on this free trip I've won. I didn't call back. I suspect that they called some other people as well. Probably other people will be going, hundreds of others, but not me. Not now. Now, no matter what I do in September, there's no way it will be nearly as cool as a 7-day vacation at a resort. I'm not going to. My computer here is 3 years old now. You realize that it's a dinosaur, don't you? My computer is just as fast as it was when I first got it, and now there are so much more faster computers, it's just not fast enough. My computer's hard drive still has a lot of space on it, but it could have a much bigger hard drive now. I'm afraid my computer just isn't good enough. Funny how it got that way without changing. And even though my computer isn't good enough, I checked my Facebook page. Well, I thought I had a good life. I mean, it says there on Facebook that I have 849 friends. Now, I'm not sure how much of those people really are my friends, but I have 849 of them. And then I started looking at some of my friends. There are some who have over 1,000 friends. I guess I don't feel as friendly anymore. And I thought I loved Denise, but I didn't go to Jared's. I didn't buy her a diamond necklace. In fact, I was informed by an ad that I can't even be romantic with Denise unless we use Sylvania light bulbs. I checked. We have Walmart great value. By the time I finished hearing from the TV ads, the magazines, the mail, the phone messages, and the emails, I have too many reasons to be unhappy to think I'll ever get there. Contentment? Really? That's something the other guy has. And look how happy he is. And look how perfect his abs are. Some years ago, U.S. News and World Report did a report on the so-called American dream. Apparently that includes owning your own home and having your basic needs met, and then also it includes being able to do the things you really want to do. The story said that Americans with what was then an average income, when polled, figured it would take almost double their current income to live the American dream. And people whose incomes were already in that range when they were told figured it would take just about double their income to live their version of the American dream. Perhaps none of the 10 Commandments is better suited to our age than number 10. This command shares a distinction from the other 9. It's the only command aimed at just the heart rather than a person's actions. It's the only law in history against coveting. It's a simple command that says, don't feel or think this way. It shows us that really all the 10 Commandments aren't just about our actions. They're aimed at our hearts. Like in Joshua 7, when Achan coveted some silver, gold, and a new robe from Babylonia. Or in 2 Samuel, when David coveted another man's wife. Or in 2 Kings 5, when Gehazi coveted a little silver and 2 sets of clothing. Or in 1 Kings 21, when Ahab coveted a vineyard. Or in Acts 5, when Ananias and Sapphira coveted the recognition of others. I think if the first command provides the motivation for keeping the other 9, command number 10 provides the explanation of why we break the other 9. It makes clear what the other 9 commands have all been assuming. Sin starts inside. So maybe you've been thinking that the point of relooking at the 10 Commandments was to change the appearance of our actions. My hope is that by the end of this morning's message, we're going to clearly see that where we need to change the most is on the inside. Exodus 20, verse 17. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or his manservant, or maidservant, his ox or donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. It's time to learn finger exercise number 10. Okay? I'm going to use all 5 fingers on each hand, and it's draw them back at us like gimme, gimme, gimme. Okay? Do not covet. Let's go to number 1. First finger, one God, no other gods. 2 fingers, bow one down, no idols. Third, 3 fingers over the mouth, do not take the Lord's name in vain. 4, on our chin, observe the Sabbath. 5, over our heart, honor our parents. 6, do not murder. 7, do not commit adultery. 8, don't steal. 9, let's see. Yeah, 9, no false testimony. And 10, okay. Now, next week, as I close the series, we're going to do a test again. We're going to make sure that you all know. But I'm almost positive by looking at each and every one of you, you've got all 10 of these commandments down. So when someone on the street comes up and says, what's the 7th commandment? You'll say, don't commit adultery. Okay? I think it's a great way for us to learn these 10 commandments. You've done a great job. And I can still see you standing in front of your mirror every morning going through all 10 of those finger exercises. Now, obviously, the opposite of coveting, the positive subject for today is contentment. For some, that's a negative image. For some people think that being content is a cow and picture old Bossy laying somewhere in the sun chewing her cud. But that's not the kind of commitment at hand. Some of the most discontented people are also some of the laziest people. And not being able to really understand it in a positive light is another indicator that we, as a society, have lost the secret of being content. So I'm going to tackle 3 questions this morning as we tackle this particular commandment. Question number 1, when did I lose it? When did I lose contentment? Have you ever had a flat tire? Boy, I have. You may be driving your car, or maybe your car was parked in the garage and you walked out and you noticed that something was wrong. And you took a close look and you noticed that the tire was flat. And you began to think, now when did I lose that air? And that kind of happens when we think about this commandment. When did I lose contentment? When did I cease to be a content person? And I want to suggest that it began for most of us the moment we left the womb. Let's face it, before then, for those 9 months, life was fine and dandy. All of a sudden, it changed. There's that smack of the bottom, those bright lights, the cold air, the breathing that needs to be done. And what's that strange gurgly feeling in my stomach? The result? Discontent. I don't like what I'm going through. This doesn't feel like I want it to. So from the moment we draw our first breath in this world, the noises that follow it are an indicator that we aren't satisfied about how things are. I know there are moments of contentment shortly after that, but as soon as we're able to understand that there's a prize inside the cereal box, something happens. All of us have been through or still live in discontent. Now, if you have been or are guilty of coveting, please don't feel foolish. It's only foolish if you don't change it. Actually, it would be a wonder if we're not all caught up to it in one degree. Let's face it, that's what advertising is based on. Think this through. The whole purpose of advertising is to create a perceived need, to impair our self-control just long enough to make the sale. Every year, billions of dollars are spent on it. Every billboard, every TV or radio commercial, every magazine ad, every brand label on clothing and shoes painstakingly created to make you be discontent or to convince you that you won't be content unless. It's what underlies the sports industry because endorsements and TV ads are all part of this amazing web of power woven to convince you that you're not satisfied, that you're not complete unless some product is a part of your world. When did you lose contentment? It wasn't because you ceased to have enough stuff. In fact, many couples look back to the early years of their marriage when they had very little, and yet were content. And they longed for those days when there wasn't as much. So you didn't lose contentment because you have fewer things now. In fact, it wasn't because of any changes outside you. It was because of change inside you. James writes, but each person is tempted when they are dragged away by their own evil desire and intents. That's when you lost it. When you allowed your own desires to entice you and drag you away. When what you wanted in life became number one on your life list of what matters. And you lost it. You lost contentment right in the middle of your comparatively affluent American lifestyle. Now, we've all lost things, and sometimes it doesn't matter. But this one does. Question number 2, what has it done? In other words, what has losing contentment done? I want to give some attention to what happens as a result of coveting and see if it deserves any more attention. Number 1, it separates us from others. Abe Lincoln was out with his 2 young sons and they were fussing at each other. And someone asked what was wrong with the boys, and Lincoln said, I have 3 walnuts and each one wants 2. I'm so glad that it's limited to just children. And now that we're older, we outgrow this kind of thinking. Like when someone else at work gets a raise and you don't. Or when someone else on the team gets to play and you don't. Or when someone else finds a good spouse and you don't. Or when one of your friends gets a new car like you've been wanting, but you don't. Admit how that affects your relationships. You see, coveting separates us from other people. Number 2, it separates us from God. Everyone who covets is also violating the first command, to have no other gods before God Almighty. Coveting is saying, I'm number 1, God is less. And for this reason, Paul writes in Colossians 3:5, put to death, therefore, whatever belongs to your earthly nature, sexual immorality, impurity, lust, evil desires, and greed, which is idolatry. Or Paul says in Ephesians 5:5, for of this you can be sure, no immoral, impure, or greedy person, such a man as an idolater, has any inheritance in the kingdom of Christ and of God. You see, coveting is the ultimate act of idolatry. It's saying, God, you shortchanged me. I deserve better than what you've given me. I deserve a better spouse. I deserve a better car, a better job, a better status than what you've given me. And we end up worshiping our desires more than the God who created us. We drive a wedge of resentment between us and God. Let's say you get a note from your son's teacher. Imagine, a note of concern. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Smith, I'm sorry to have to write you this note, but I'm very concerned for Hector's well-being. He says he never receives a good breakfast before school. He also said that he never has clean underwear or socks to put in on the mornings. Would you please be sure to take better care of him? What? You know that isn't true. Now that would be frustrating if you got such a note, wouldn't it? You work hard to make sure Hector has good breakfasts. You know that his mother makes sure that he has clean clothes to wear. In fact, you know she's always telling him to never leave the house with dirty underwear in case you get in a car accident. How frustrating to find out that he's been telling other people the exact opposite. And not only that, but imagine how difficult it would be for him to face his parents when you find out that he has been saying such things. How frustrating it must be to God when we indicate to anyone that what God has given to us isn't enough. How difficult it must be for us to face Him and speak with Him when He knows we've been saying such things, a wedge between ourselves and God. Church growth experts report that in almost every case when a church determines to make changes for the sake of reaching the lost, the strongest resistance comes from people of the church who have given their time and money and who feel like the church should focus on meeting their own needs. They're jealous and it leads to resentment and quarreling. There's another name for that. It's called coveting. And then number 3, it becomes a heartless taskmaster. Now, I don't know who counted these, but it's been suggested that 100 years ago, if you asked him, the average Joe would have about 72 wants. If pressed, he might list about 16 basic necessities. Today, the average Joe would have about 487 wants, and about 94 of those would be called absolute necessities. 100 years ago, without a commercial-driven economy, there were about 200 objects that were pressed on to people for sale. Today, there's over 32,000. Total of all the brands and varieties is closer to 360,000. The acquisition of stuff hasn't quelled our appetite for it. It's increased it. If only I had a faster computer. If only I had a better car. If only I had a prettier wife. If only I had a better job. If only my health were better. If only I had a bigger house. If only I had the right light bulbs. The list goes on and on. No wonder if Jesus warned in Luke 12:15, watch out. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions. Solomon knew this. In Ecclesiastes 5, he said, whoever loves money never has enough. Whoever loves wealth is never satisfied. This too is meaningless. As goods increase, so do those who consume them. And what benefit are they to the owners except to feast his eyes on them? Discontent becomes a heartless taskmaster that drives people to bitterness and overwork and finally to their graves. That's what losing contentment does for us, and we need it back. We need that lost gem of contentment that Paul writes about when he was a prisoner. He said in Philippians 4, I'm not saying this because I am in need, for I have learned to be content whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do all this in Him who gives me strength. So I'm naturally wanting to know the third question, where can I find it? Where can I find it? You see, the problem of a coveting heart problem, it should come as no surprise that the cure or contentment is a heart change. The Old Testament predicted the end of the Old Covenant, and it was going to be replaced with something better, a new covenant. In Jeremiah 31, we read, the days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the people of Israel. This is the covenant I will make with the people of Israel after that time, declares the Lord. I will put my law in their minds and write it on their hearts. We need to engage in some honest to goodness heart changing to get out from under the cloud of discontent. So I'm going to give you 4 quick actions that will help anyone take up contentment more successfully. Number 1, distinguish between the temporal and the eternal. Distinguish between the temporal and the eternal. Paul says in Colossians 3, since then you have been raised with Christ. Set your hearts on things above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. Set your minds on things above, not on earthly things, for you died, and your life is now hidden with Christ in God. One man put it like this, whatever advantage you have must be used for the sake of the kingdom, or it will corrupt you. Whatever it is, you must determine to use it for the kingdom and not just for yourself. The story is told of an American Jew who went to visit the Holy Land. He visited the famous teacher, Rabbi Chaim. When the American entered the rabbi's home, he was amazed at how little was there. All the rabbi had was a table, a bench, and a little paddle. The American says, "Rabbi, where's all your furniture?" And the rabbi said to the American, "Where's all your furniture?" The American says, "I don't have any furniture with me. I'm just passing through." And the rabbi said, "So am I." G.K. Chesterton said, "There are two ways to get enough. One is to accumulate more and more. The other is to desire less and less." And we need to be able to look at earthbound things as just that, earthbound things. Number two, we need to distinguish. We need to distinguish between wants and needs. The Quakers are remembered for their very simple way of life. One day a Quaker was watching as a wealthy man moved into a house next to him. After watching load after load of the finest furniture and things going into the house, he saw the man of the house and said, "Friend, if thee have need of anything, come see me, and I will teach thee how to live without it." We need to remind ourselves constantly there's a difference between wants and needs. Paul says, "Godliness with contentment is great gain. For we brought nothing into the world, and we can take nothing out of it. But if we have food and clothing, we will be content with that." What was he saying? He was challenging us to consider what really is necessary in life. He was saying that there's a difference between wants and needs. If we could boil our lives down to these two categories, what we need and what we want, we'd find ourselves desiring less and less. Number three, ask God to change how you think. Ask God to change how you think. He says in Ephesians 4, Paul says, "You were taught with regard to your former way of life, to put off your old self, which is being corrupted by its deceitful desires, to be made new in the attitude of your minds, and to put on the new self, created to be like God in true righteousness and holiness." We need God's help to be made new in the way we think, especially when it comes to contentedness. I'm afraid too many people equate being contented with that old cow sitting in the grass chewing her cud. To many people, the whole concept of being content means having no life, no spirit, no drive, just sitting back and being satisfied with the status quo, good or bad. But God doesn't tell us to be lifeless lumps of zero enthusiasm. In fact, Jesus said, "Happy are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness." He said, "Seek first His kingdom and His righteousness." He said, "Ask and it shall be given to you. Seek and you shall find. Knock and the door shall be opened unto you." Paul said in Romans 16, "Be wise at what is good." In Luke 17, the disciples cried out, "Lord, increase our faith." The proverb writer says, "Wisdom is supreme, therefore get wisdom. Though it cost all you have, get understanding. Esteem her, and she will exalt you. Embrace her, and she will honor you." And then in Hebrews it tells us that anyone who comes to Him must believe that He exists, and that He rewards those who earnestly seek Him. The words tell us that being a person of character means really having some deep desires, some dissatisfaction with the things remaining as they are. In other words, we need to have a certain lust for things, for the right things, for the things that God desires for us. We might say that being content means aligning your desires with the things God desires you to have. So ask God to change how you think. Ask Him to help you be wrapped up with the right things. And then lastly, learn all about grace again. Learn all about grace again. Notice the subject here. The passage is about God's grace in Titus 2. "For the grace of God has appeared that offers salvation to all people." It teaches us to say no to ungodliness and worldly passions, and to live self-controlled, upright, and godly lives in this present age. While we wait for the blessed hope, the appearing of the glory of our great God and Savior, Jesus Christ, who gave Himself for us to redeem us from all wickedness, and to purify for Himself a people that are His very own, eager to do what is good. There were several occasions when the Lord taught discontented people about His grace. Jonah wasn't content that the city of Nineveh was destroyed. Of course, Jonah had been given a second chance after he ran from God's command to go and preach to them. So God gave Jonah a lesson in grace. In the parable of the prodigal son, the older brother of the prodigal wasn't content that his brother would receive a party and special treatment. And the father took him aside and reminded him about grace. Jesus talked about a parable of hired vineyard workers at different times of the day. But at the end of the day, He paid all of them the agreed amount. To the guys that worked the longest, and then paid the same amount to those who worked just a few hours. Needless to say, the guys who worked all day protested. They needed a lesson in God's grace. Don't fall into the trap of thinking, I deserve better, especially when it's because God blesses someone else. Thank Him for His grace that led you and me to get out of bed this morning and draw breath. Thank Him for His grace that allows a stained person like me to be cleaned and made new and fit for heaven by the blood of Jesus. Now, I don't get what I deserve, and I praise God for it. Put a picture of what you want out in front of you. Just make sure it's the right thing. Jesus did, who for the joy set before Him endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Jesus had a goal out in front of Him as He hung on the cross. And you and I need to crave and to long for the things He longs for, enough that He would die for them. Paul says God wants all people to be saved and to come to a knowledge of the truth. All men, all women, all people. And that includes you. Maybe we need to hear this again. God wants all people to be saved and to come to the knowledge of truth. Are you there? Do you understand? Are you with us? Will you pray with me, Father? I guess you save the best to last, to point the direction of what's causing the discontent that's often in our lives. It is a matter of the heart. And it's a reality, Lord, that maybe we don't think you've done enough for us when nothing could be further from the truth. Lord, I thank you for your Son Jesus and the gift of eternal life. I thank you for the breath that I take each day. I thank you for the opportunity to live for you and to recognize all that you've done. I thank you for the salvation that you offer to each and every one of us who places our faith and trust in your Son, Jesus. Continue to teach us what you would have us to know. Allow us to use what we have learned in the world, and may we be the kind of disciples that called people need wants to be. In Christ's name.